Hi, everybody. Welcome to our second virtual travel night for Pique Travel. I am Linda Bent. I'm the owner of the agency, and I am so thankful that you were able to join us. And hopefully, we'll be sharing some really inspiring and uplifting and optimism on the travel environment for you today. So I'm going to share my screen so that I can share my presentation with you. And we will get started. And let me share now. All right. So again, welcome. First, I wanted to get into, of course, I am not alone in this venture. We have such an amazing team behind us, in front of us, frankly. Several of you know that we have a team of designers that are right on staff with us. And what some of you might not know is that we also have 10 to 12 affiliates that are independent contractors for us all over the country that also books travel through Pique. So here's some of our team, and San Francisco, New York, Chicago, of course, several of us in Minneapolis, Portland. So thanks to everybody who helps us do what we do and keep the Pique brand what you guys have come to expect it to be. So let's talk about what we're going to go over today. We are going to share some updates, frankly, on what's the state of the state in travel, give you some ideas on traveling short-term, maybe closer to home, maybe as we start to venture out a little bit with some direct, shorter flights, where some good ideas. And then, of course, we continue to get asked a lot of questions about, as we transition back into traveling, what will it look like? What's the industry doing? And things like that. So we're going to address some of that. So we'll toggle between the two discussions and hopefully answer some of your burning questions and give you some good ideas on where you might be able to go, because I know we're all itching to get out there again. So one thing I wanted to share with you was a poll that we took with our clients, and we asked them, when do you think you will take your next domestic trip? And the interesting thing is that 85% of those surveyed said that they would take their next domestic trip yet this year. So I know the summer and fall are really, on everybody's radar to maybe get out and do a road trip to a national park or maybe a beach resort to just get out of the home. Everybody has been kind of cooped up. And so that's very telling and very apropos of what's going on. And I'll show you what's going on in the industry. And it's very much parallel to that. And then we also asked that group, when do you think you'll be traveling internationally? So domestic was 85% that they'll go yet this year. And when we asked them about their next international trip, most people have their sights set on first and second quarter of 2021, that they will start to feel comfortable heading a little further away. So I think that's interesting because this next slide talks to you about a national poll. If you are familiar with Afar magazine, that's where these results came from. And I like looking at Afar because I think it really parallels our clientele. It is a little more affluent, higher household income or retired comfortably. However, more so what I like is it is pretty diehard travelers. Even if you're middle class America, you might spend your last penny on travel. So it's also the psychology and psychographics of these people that travel is a very, very important piece of their lives. And so according to that Afar magazine survey, which was just done, 84% of their respondents said that they would take a domestic trip before the end of the year. And if you remember, ours was 85%, so very, very close. And 30% said they will travel internationally by the year end, which I thought was very interesting and I love, because it gives us hope that we will maybe get through this sooner than later. And then, our perspective, of course, everybody asks always, what are we feeling and what are we hearing? So of course, in addition to polls that are being done in the industry like that Afar one, we stay very in touch with our consortium Virtuoso and ASTA, which is our travel advisor international association. And our perspective really mirrors a lot of what is what is reflected in those surveys. We do expect July and August will be a lot of road trips yet this summer, with national parks or just little weekend getaways, maybe a lot of family travel, of course, like we usually see. September, October, and into fall, we definitely are seeing more short haul flights. So maybe it's going out to Portland, Seattle, the West Coast, definitely Florida, you'll hear more about. So those shorter, but still closer to home. In fact, I was on a big call with Delta Airlines the other day, and they said that they will be increasing their airlift. They will be reinstating or increasing their flights by 1,000 flights in July and August. So that's great, because of course they wouldn't be doing that if they weren't seeing some demand and knowing that people are getting back out there and things are opening up to us. Winter, as we go through the slide, people definitely will be starting to head further away. We are seeing Mexico and some of those direct flights, Cancun, Cabo, Costa Rica, Hawaii. So, you know, especially for those of us in Minneapolis, where a getaway is, a winter getaway is kind of nice, that will probably remain true again this year. And then 2021, as the surveys and as you guys have told us, into 2021 is when we'll be looking more to go internationally. Now, it doesn't mean to wait to plan it until 2021, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, but at least in terms of when people will travel. And just know that at Pique and our affiliates, we really are trying to work very hard. We have reached out to many of our international partners that we rely on and partner with around the world to kind of offer a low risk, no risk proposition to you as travelers. And that's kind of what we've dubbed it, low risk, no risk. And why that's important is because if we can have favorable terms, maybe it's a lower deposit required up front, and maybe it's a very flexible cancellation policy. Ideally, of course, refunds instead of credits, which are not always possible, but the more we can get packages or put together custom designed trips that offer us that ability, of course, if it's low risk to you to book, then there's no worry in planning out further, like those 2021 trips. If we can get that in there and I can protect your investment, my team can, then it encourages people, and people are having more confidence with that. So make sure no matter what destination you talk to us about and when, that we cover off on that, because of course understanding cancellation policies is a huge part of our job, and we monitor it very closely. And in some cases, the value of some of these properties or airlines is really favorable to the traveler right now. All right, I will give you some caveats to our perspective, though, is it has to be based on your comfort level. And, you know, of course, we're managing a variety of people. Some just want to get out. That's the get out of jail free. They've been cooped up. They just, if they will let me in, please let me go. And I'm going. And then there's some of you that are kind of middle of the road, proceeding with a little caution, optimistic, but cautious, because maybe you're surrounded by people who are a little more vulnerable to the virus or whatever your personal case might be, and you're just wanting to make sure you watch it very closely. And then there's some of you who won't go until there's a vaccine, at least internationally, maybe domestically or you know, depending on your comfort level. So this is key for us. Be sure to identify kind of what camp you fit in, and talk openly about your about it with your travel designer, because it helps us understand where you are, and we can meet you at that place in terms of which ones are really comfortable, low cases, you know, no quarantine, versus, you know, some that we're watching a little closer. So identify where you're at, be open with your travel designer, and make sure you're comfortable, because that's what it's all about. All right, so let's talk about a little inspiration. I love this slide. My operations manager, Jess, found this, and I love it because, of course, tonight is a little bit of the theme of transitioning back into travel, and of course, literally and figuratively, this slide represents that. But I also love it because it takes me to a nice place. It takes me to what looks like a jungle setting, probably has amazing culture and wildlife, and we're yearning to go. And I love this photo. So again, you know, it is our job. I hope you're getting your updates simply on the 10 o'clock news and not letting this dominate your life, but being smart about it. On the other hand, it is our job. We are living this every day. We are monitoring not only every country and tourism area around the world, but now, of course, state by state. If people want to go to national parks or domestic travel, where is it safe and where should they go? So we monitor this, frankly, hourly. It's our job and we're living it. We are watching, you know, who's lifting travel restrictions. We're watching the nuances of those lifts, because it might mean they're lifting and they're letting people in, but if they're still mandating a 14-day quarantine upon arrival, kind of doesn't work perfectly. Or maybe they're letting international travelers in, but they're not letting the United States in quite yet. And we're seeing that with Europe and some of the headlines this week. But again, like I said, we're not just monitoring internationally, domestically too. So based on this and knowing that we're watching things closely, let's talk about a couple of fun ideas. So last month, if you joined us for our virtual travel night, we talked about kind of 4 areas. And if you're interested in any of these areas, please reach out to us and we shared several itineraries in each of these categories. And there's some fun things. One was road trips, so like Big Sur and Highway 1 across along the California coast. We did a couple that are on the East Coast. So of course the road trips closer to home thing stays in that vein. The weekend getaways, that photo is actually of Oregon wine country, which is kind of a fun alternative to Napa. As much as we of course love Napa and Sonoma, if you've been several times and looking to get something different under your belt, Oregon's fun, and it's got the Columbia River and the gorge there, so there's some amazing things to do in that area. And then we had several other weekend getaways. And then boutique properties, you know, a lot of people are not necessarily looking to go to the big resorts, but they might want a smaller kind of intimate experience. So we talked about some of our favorite and our access to some boutique properties around the country. And then the final one, which actually has been kind of one of our most fun because we've gotten several leads off of this conversation from last month, is ranch experiences. Again, smaller boutique properties maybe, but also outdoors. You know, of course the CDC and others are encouraging us to be outdoors if we are going to be with people, because it just keeps us safer. And the ranch experiences we shared were just amazing. It's very high on my family's list as well. So let's talk this month. This month we're going to categorize them a little differently. We're going to talk about family travel, active travel, relaxing getaways, and then I wanted to throw in what should be on your Wanderlist. And I think this is kind of a fun one because I'll share some ideas with you, because I talk a lot to clients who do like to plan out and hear a lot of what is on their hit list for travel. So I'll share what we think should be on your bucket list. All right, category number 1. So this is really up to you to define, because some people you might have just 1 or 2 kids. They might be toddlers. They could be teenagers. You could have 3 or 4 that are all adults or in college. And of course, when we plan family travel, it means we're planning around multiple schedules. It also means multi-gen. We have a ton of grandparents who not only, of course, hope to leave some financial support or stability to their kids and grandkids, but more so now than ever, these grandparents and parents want to travel and experience things with their family. It's more important to be present and do that. So no matter how you define it, we're giving you a few ideas that range and are very family friendly experiences. So the first one is the Florida Keys. Florida, unfortunately, recently had just a little bit of a bump. The Keys, though, however, has been very, very good with avoiding and limiting their exposure to the virus. And because it is a little closer to home, it can be a road trip. A lot of people fly into Miami and rent a car. So depending on your comfort level, again, getting down to the Florida Keys could be a great family getaway, even yet this summer, or definitely into fall and winter. It did open up to tourism on June 1st. You know, they are, as of right now, and this is important to talk to your designer about on any of these ideas, but the regulations do change, as we've mentioned, you know, quite frequently. Right, as of right now, they are requiring masks if you're in public enclosed areas, so pretty much anything with a roof over it. Unless you're eating or drinking at the moment, they do ask for masks, which I think is not a bad practice anywhere you're going these days, just to help us curb this quicker. And like I said, most fly into Miami and road trip down with a rental car. It's about an hour, 20 minutes to get to Key Largo, which on that map at the top you can see is the first point of entry out onto the Keys. And if you're going all the way to Key West, it's about 3.5 hours. So, but of course, beautiful. That overseas highway is 113-ish miles. It's gorgeous. But just know that the Keys are broken into 5 regions. And this is important because, again, have this discussion with your designer, because I put this under family, but this could easily go into a couple's getaway or a girlfriend's long weekend or several couples going away together. But what's important is each region is a little bit different. So like, for example, in this case, Marathon is really known for its family accommodations, activities. There's a little turtle hospital there where they're helping to preserve and protect and then administer to the turtles. There's a dolphin research center. There's a great aquarium. So I put Marathon in particular is great in the Keys for families. Of course, water activities go without saying. And it is known for diving and snorkeling. Of course, the reef system is great. And then as you'll see on that map, the dive flags are actually all shipwrecks. So if you're a diver or snorkeler, getting out in the water and on the water is, of course, kind of a highlight for the Keys. So again, even if you're not traveling with family, talk to your designer, because if you want the nightlife, Key West, of course, is the way to go. But there's other, you know, if you want more of a chill, there's a great little kind of quiet island off of one of the Keys that is much more quiet and private. So again, so many choices. So let us know if this is one on your radar. The next one of my personal favorites, my family is quite into the outdoors and nature and stuff. And this could be a road trip. It could be, you know, a flight and then a road trip. We flew into Bozeman and spent time with our travel designer and good friend, Ann Toole, who lives out there. But Yellowstone and the Tetons, great summer, fall getaway. Frankly, even in the winter, and ask about that if you're interested, where you can go out and track the wolves and stuff like that in the winter. But for fall and summer, we're talking about road tripping and getting out there. Either of these destinations can, of course, stand on their own. If you have 5-7 days, you could do each of them. There's plenty to keep you busy, but they are so close together that I just kind of paired them. When we did it, we did road trip into Yellowstone and spent a couple days in the park. One thing to know is the accommodations outside of the park will give you a little more flexibility. There's a little more option. Some of the park accommodations are not open yet or are definitely limiting their capacity. So again, planning ahead is kind of maybe more key than ever, because the park is also limiting the number of passes and who they will let in. So it's not like you could just drive up to the gate and expect to get in. If you do and they're out of passes, they might say the next available date to get in is next Saturday, and that might not work in your schedule, of course. Luckily, right now, they're meeting their requirements on limited passes by limiting and excluding for now the big motor coach buses. So if this has been on your list, now is a great time to go, because you aren't getting the big motor coach buses where 80 people pile out and might pull off to your quiet, serene little overlook pass, and it's not quiet and serene anymore. So it's a good time for a lot of reasons. And then, you know, yeah, Grand Tetons, of course, is just such an amazing destination. It's just right south of Yellowstone, and it is on the Snake River. Jackson Hole is the area of this park that is most known, very known for skiing, frankly. A lot of properties right at the base of the mountains. Beautiful Four Seasons we had stayed at actually when we were out there. But the Snake River winds through this area, so it just opens up a lot of fun activities. We did some whitewater rafting. You can do fly fishing and hiking and stuff like that. In fact, in either of these areas, I would urge you to consider a guide for a day. We have a couple people we work with out there who are local to that area and registered guides. And even in Yellowstone, if you plan to spend 2 or 3 days, if you spent your first day with a guide, and they can really help you maximize your time and your learnings, again, especially if you're with kids. I don't know why this is, but kids tend to listen to other people, maybe more so than their parents. Plus, it's so much more meaningful than just reading every roadside sign and getting your knowledge that way when somebody is storytelling and doing it that in that regard. So I urge you to consider a guide for one day and soak up as much as you can. So in the Tetons, of course, Jackson Hole is in the valley there. And then that little picture of the Old West town is the town of Jackson, Wyoming. Quaint, cute, fun to walk around. They do a reenactment of the Old Wild West several times a day. The shops are so fun and cute. And then we actually did the rodeo while we were there. That was really fun. It's kind of apropos to when you're in the Wild West. So that was really fun. So just know that that the Yellowstone and the Tetons are an amazing family vacation and should be really on your radar anytime. It's a beautiful place. Costa Rica is our next family destination. Many of you have maybe been to Costa Rica. It is a hot place to travel and has really seen a soar in tourism in the last 5 to 10 years. What we like about it is, at least here from Minneapolis and many places around the country, winter usually does have a direct flight from Minneapolis into Liberia, so it makes it really easy. It's a 4 or 5 hour direct flight. So in this time, if you're trying to minimize your exposure, one flight would get you here. The nice thing is of course the west side of Costa Rica is on the Pacific Ocean. We'll talk about Belize in a little later, and that's on the Caribbean side. So these two, while they have some similarities, are very different because of that reason alone. The Pacific side is a little bit rougher water in some times of the year, so maybe more surfing and things like that. We did snorkel, of course, too, and get out on the water. It's beautiful. And then, of course, inland is Arenal, which is the volcano, so hot springs and the rainforest. So again, taking a guided hike through the rainforest where you can learn about all of the vegetation and the wildlife and things like that. It's fascinating. It's great. Great bird watching if you're into that. And the wildlife and the hikes in particular in the rainforest is beautiful. And one of the things that I really love about our access at Costa Rica is we have a couple partners where we have access to some amazing eco lodges. And so sustainable tourism, of course, is a great thing that we should all, when we can, support it. But I will say that these lodges are beautiful, and they're set into the setting in a very conservation way and help you take advantage of your surroundings, and it's beautiful. And again, like I said, now might be a good time to get down there, or sooner than later, because as there's a little bit of a lull in saturation, if you will, of travelers, Costa Rica was very busy before, lots and lots of travelers. So, and now they have the infrastructure to handle it. They have tons of great resorts and boutique properties, but man, it's nice when there's a few less people there. And then also for those of you who are really watching it as we do, it is one of the top 20 health systems in the world. So it is someplace that you can feel good about going and not being maybe kind of too isolated, if you will, if something did happen or if you needed medical support. All right, our next category is active travel. And sometimes we say adventure, but active does not always have to be adventurous. Active is that, it's kind of keeping you up and moving and taking advantage of other things. The first category I have is called Backroads, and I call it that because it is literally the name of a company that we work with. And some of you have traveled with them before. We have a lot of clients who are really loyal to Backroads. And basically, they are known for their biking trips, domestically and international. They operate in over 100 countries, I think, or maybe 65 countries or something. So they have amazing biking trips. But what you may not know is that they also have hiking and walking and multi-adventure. So depending on where you're going, they might have kayaking, hiking, and biking, or they might just have kayaking and biking. So there are some really fun itineraries, domestically and internationally. A couple I wanted to call attention to domestically, seeing we're kind of looking a little closer to home right now, is there's several in Alaska, and there's a Kenai Peninsula multi-adventure, and I'm a big fan of the Kenai Peninsula, but where you can hike, bike, and kayak. And of course, it's great because you start in Anchorage, as most Alaska journeys do. You fly into Anchorage, pretty easy to get to from the US, from the continental US. And then you work your way out to Seward, which is on the coastline. And you get out on the water with the kayaking and whale watching, depending on the time of year you're going. And just, it's beautiful to see the glaciers, get out on the water. The scenery is just unbelievable. Alaska is high on a lot of people's list right now. California has a great biking tour. One of our team members actually did it through Napa and Sonoma. And then just so you know too, which is an important point to call out, Backroads has a lot of e-bikes available. So if you're comfortable, but you're not always confident depending on the terrain, e-bike is a great way to go because it kicks in when you tell it to kick in. So just know that you don't have to be intimidated by biking and keeping up with the crowd. They do a really great job of having multiple guides with you and a trailer vehicle, a vehicle that is there to help out if needed. A couple others in Arizona, of course, in Sedona with walking and hiking, and Tucson has a couple beautiful national parks around there where there's a multi-adventure. And then one that I'm kind of personally curious about is Savannah and Charleston. That whole area is really kind of high on my list right now. And they have a really unique multi-adventure where you basically walk through history, and it's a lot of strolling and walking, and then there's some biking. So that one's kind of one to watch too. And then one last thing before I leave Backroads is something that you might not realize. This applies to a lot of things that I don't know if travelers understand about how a travel agency works, but Backroads or even cruises, or if you're a Tauk and an Abercrombie and Kent, fan, loyalist, booking those things through a travel advisor costs exactly the same, and sometimes we can get a better value or a better rate than even you can by booking direct. These are companies that pay us commission on the back end. So just know that, like in this case, Backroads is no love lost for you to use a designer. You're not paying more. It's the exact same thing you would find online or better. And many of these companies, Tauk, Abercrombie & Kent, Backroads in particular here, are virtuoso partners. So, and we're part of that consortium. So we are able to get amenities that you can't get. We might be able to get you a hotel upgrade or other things that even increase the value of your trip just by using us. So some people come to us and want ideas on what to do, and others come to us and say, I want the Alaska Kenai Peninsula and I want these dates, and we just help them book it, because then we can help with air and maybe a little pre or post excursion on top of their itinerary. So just keep that in mind, the little nugget I wanted to throw in.
The other active one I wanted to share was Belize, and I mentioned this one earlier. As opposed to Costa Rica, that's on the Pacific side, Belize is on the Caribbean side, which is an important differentiator because just the nature of the water and some of the experiences is a little bit different. Now, again, I put it in active travel, but Belize is someplace that, for example, we took our family. In fact, we did a multi-gen family. Jim's parents was generous, and for their anniversary, we went on there were 23 of us, or 22 of us that went to Belize. Amazing destination. I think Jim and I have been there 6 or 7 times, and it's very near and dear to us. Because it's on the Caribbean side, the waters are a little different. It's actually on the 2nd largest barrier reef in the world. So it is really known for its snorkeling and diving and water clarity and things like that. That picture on the top is one of its most iconic water areas off the coast. It's called the Blue Hole. It is meant more for divers than it is for snorkelers because it's a sunken volcano, so you kind of need to go down into it to really get the full effect. But also what we love to do for clients who aren't going to venture out, because it is a little bit of a boat ride to get out there and things like that, but it is on many people's Wanderlist. But this shot is iconic, of course, because it's taken from the air. And we have had people where we like to split between rainforest and reef when we do Belize. And on the way out to the reef, we often will have a flight, and we have arranged it before where the flight might just make a little deviation and go over the Blue Hole, so you can see it from the aerial viewpoint too. So keep that in mind. It is an amazing destination. The activeness comes, because interior too, of course, the water activities, snorkeling and any of the normal water activities helps with the activeness too, but some of the active comes from the rainforest. There are some amazing hikes. They are very proud of their Mayan culture, which is very deep rooted in Belize. So hiking and walking around the Maya ruins, again, we highly suggest a guide, and we can help, propose which set of ruins you go to, depending on how into it you are and how long you have, and which guide we would use. But lots of great stuff in the rainforest. In fact, over 40% of Belize is protected rainforest still. So it's beautiful. We do suggest splitting between rainforest and reef. A couple of highlights on those photos below. Even though it's active, if you do want a little leisure time, we've done tubing, cave tubing, where it's on a river and you float through this cave system. That's beautiful. That middle photo is just a cue for me to remind you that also villas, private villas. This one happens to be a favorite property of ours is Chalk Creek within the rainforest, and they have some new private family villas that we've had clients stay at and love it. Private pool, but on the grounds to take advantage of the other resort activities and things like that. And then, as I've mentioned, the Maya ruins are spectacular, and the history that goes with them and learning. So lots of great stuff in Belize. So keep that in mind as an active possibility. And it's super easy to get to from the US. So before I move on, let me just say that, of course, Atlanta has many choices through there, but as does Miami and Houston, I believe. Now, we'll watch those flights because some have been suspended temporarily, but will be offered again. But for example, from Minneapolis, we get on the 5:00 a.m. flight to Atlanta. Literally by 2:00, we're in the jungle. It's awesome. US currency, English speaking, central time zone, so no jet lag, just real accessible, nice little international destination to get to. All right, relaxing. We've had clients that have called us and said, just get me out of my house, put me in a property. I don't care if I have to 14-day quarantine. I just want to get out, relax, and enjoy, and have someone else cook for me, frankly, right? This one, while I normally wouldn't put Cancun on a relaxing getaway necessarily, this property called Nizuc is fantastic. Again, Cancun, once it already does, but again, once airlift picks back up again, many direct flights in from all over the country to get there. And Nizuc is only 10 to 15 minutes away from the airport, but you would never know it. The way they have structured this property is you feel like you are in your own little world. You are away from the strip of all the big resorts and kind of the hubbub of what Cancun can be known for. You don't feel that way at all. It is an amazing getaway. Jim and I were just there a year ago. We actually had the kids with us. It was Abby's 13th birthday at the time. And so easy to get to. 4-hour flight to Cancun, 10-minute ride, and you're there. It's behind a gated, isolated area. And it's beautiful. Really great cuisine, kind of more modern feel, little zen area. And a highlight was the spa. They have a really unique proprietary kind of 7-step thing that you go through before any treatment you get. And they do a mix of like hot and cold things. So you do a little plunge pool and then you sit in the sauna, and then, so they have a very meticulous thing they take you through, and it's meant to open your pores and just get your mind and body ready for whatever you're about to experience at the spa. And just really unique, fun getaway. The other thing to know is that photo on the lower right is, again, some private villas that they have. So if you want to have resort amenities and access to the cuisine and that kind of stuff, but you still want your privacy, each little villa has, you enter your own little gate area, has your own little plunge pool, an outdoor sitting area. Room service, of course, is kind of becoming a popular thing so that people aren't in the restaurants in huge crowds. So keep that in mind as if you're looking for kind of a private villa option too. And the other thing is if you are going for couples or girlfriends or whatever, they do have an adults only area. That little area on the right hand side of that top picture where it's the brown roof, that is an adults only area. So if you do want to get away from, if there are families or children, you can come and go from that if you're an adult. And then of course you have access to the cenotes. We did rappelling and zip lining, and we rented some speedboats and were able to get out on the reef to snorkel and stuff like that. So has all the access to Mexico and Cancun that you know, but you go back to your little isolated getaway. Highly recommend this property. Last month we actually also talked about Enchantment. Enchantment is down in the Sedona area, and again, I love this place because it has one of the most renowned spas. Mi Amo is right on, it shares the property with Enchantment, and it's set within the valley outside of Sedona in the Red Rocks. It is gorgeous. I mean, these photos, of course, don't capture it because depending on the time of the day, the light just illuminates these rocks. Again, great pool area, good for families or couples and girlfriends, or, you know, frankly, we've had some people that just have gone by themselves for a long weekend. It is close to the Grand Canyon. I think it was an 1.5-hour drive when we went up there. And I want to kind of call out that middle photo. That is taken within the Mi Amo spa area. And it's a little ritual they do each morning. And it's kind of meditation, but it really helps you to understand some of the Navajo culture, and which is, of course, prominent in that area. And you can just feel it. So it's a great place for a little long weekend or week if you have it to spend. Gorgeous property, highly recommend it. All right, and then I know my staff is laughing at me right now because they anytime I get a chance to mention Blackberry Farm, I do, because this is not your typical farm, trust me. And I'm a farm girl from Wisconsin, so I have some points of comparison. This is a luxury property. It's set on 4,200 acres in the foothills in Tennessee, the Smoky Mountain foothills. And it is so high on my list to want to go. Ironically, I have not been, but Again, for a getaway, should be high on your list if you like the outdoors. It is a working farm to some degree because of course they have gardens, they do have some livestock, but on 4,200 acres, if you don't want to be part of that part of it, trust me, there's plenty of other things to do. They do have a renowned spa, fitness, yoga classes and other fitness classes and a gym. And then their spa, of course, has multiple treatments and beautiful things. Their cuisine, they are known because a lot of it is literally farm to table. They forage in their woods for their mushrooms, and they have gardens, their cheeses from their livestock. So it is a charming, the photo on the bottom is kind of just meant to give you an idea of the accommodations there. It is quaint and charming and private and quiet. But if you do want some activeness, just know they have tons of activities too. Horseback riding and fly fishing and kayaking and lots of options, archery, other things. It is not adults only, so just know that there could be families or children around. But they do have family activities where the kids can go and do their own thing. So keep it in mind. Culinary tastings and wine tastings they have. So a lot of activities if you want to sprinkle in some activity into your relaxing getaway. So Blackberry Farm in Tennessee. And then our final category for inspiration, at least for now, and then we're going to get back into some of the questions and state of travel right now, is what, in my opinion, what should be on your Wanderlist. And I wanted to highlight a couple based on a few reasons. One is they're actually faring quite well on the COVID situation. They have started to lift their travel restrictions, and they've maybe either had lower cases or have been progressing through their journey on this virus. So it's a good place to go from a health and safety standpoint. And they're often classified as over touristed. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But basically what I mean, and I mentioned it a little with with Costa Rica. Super popular place, lots of visitors every year. And that's the case in some of these. So in particular, the middle photo represents Croatia, which is one we're going to talk to. Really grown in popularity over the last 5 to 10 years and was starting to get a little bit of the rap of there's a lot of people there. Now we do have tricks. Of course, we recommend shoulder season instead of peak season. You still get the good weather, but maybe it's a little less crowds. So of course there's some ways around things like that. However, it's a real, over tourism is becoming a real issue. So we're going to focus on 3 for today. The top photo is Iceland. Again, getting quite popular for the tourists, so saturation was getting quite high. Croatia, I mentioned, and then of course the third one, which is all near and dear to a lot of our hearts, is Italy. Whether you're going for the first time or the 10th time, I don't know if any of us can really get enough of it. So let's start with Iceland. Again, I think it's someplace that should be on your bucket list if it's not already, for a few reasons. One is it really is quite accessible from the United States. Now, I have heard that Delta, United, and American, I know they have suspended their flights there, at least temporarily, but it is one that is being talked about right now of reinstating them because they have fared well against the virus, and they are doing some testing upon arrival and other measures that is increasing the confidence of travelers to go there. But you can do it a couple ways. I do love it when people go there as the destination because there is a lot to see. You can quite easily fill 7 to 10 days and not feel like that is too much, even though it's an island nation. You fly into Reykjavik, which of course is this town. It is a charming urban area. The locals are super local and fun and laid back, but they have great museums, a great symphony hall, great architecture, and of course you're surrounded by the water. But know that you can do it as its own destination, but also to get a flavor of it, a lot of people do it as a stopover. So if you're going to Scandinavia or Western Europe, this is a great place to do 3 or 4 days. Maybe you use Reykjavik as your hub and your home base, and you do a couple day trips out. So either one, keep in mind, could be a great way to experience Iceland. It is nature lovers' paradise: waterfalls, glaciers, fjords, rolling prairies. I mean, they have a very vast array of topical or topographical variety. It's really amazing, and also could be very on the active list. Betsy on our team did some ice climbing with the whole gear and everything, and others of us have hiked it and just done some casual hiking and biking there. So nature lovers, I had to put the middle one in because if you are looking for a getaway in like September, October, November, the Northern Lights, this is one of the best places to see the Northern Lights, and that is a great time of the year to go to see it. So if you want to do a Wednesday to Sunday, or if you have more time, that's even better, and do it at that time of year, let us help you go see the Northern Lights there. It's great. The right picture at the bottom is the Blue Lagoon, which many of you have probably heard about if you're familiar with Iceland. It is an iconic spot. It does not often look like this because it is quite popular, so there are usually a fair amount of people in there. But it is, again, it's a hot springs area. It's a natural spa area, and there's minerals in the water naturally that make this a great place to go and relax. A lot of times we'll do it as either welcoming you into Iceland because it's between the airport and Reykjavik, or on your way back to the airport to relax before you get on the plane. So keep it in mind, but Iceland Air in particular does still operate its flights, and the others will be reinstating them soon, I'm sure. And again, if you can get out on the water, it's great whale watching. The fjords, to see the island from the water is great. And then one last thing I'll just throw in is kind of a unique experience that we've had clients do is the Icelandic horses are a different, they're a smaller breed of horse, and they have their own gait, so their own stride. And so it's kind of a unique thing that if you're a horseback rider or just want something different, we've had people just do a short hour horseback ride on the Icelandic horses. And it's kind of a notable, cool thing because it's one of the only places in the world, of course, that you can experience that. So keep that in mind. Our next place, as I had mentioned earlier, that I wanted to say should be on your Wanderlist if it's not already, is Croatia. It has soared in popularity in the last 5 to 10 years, but it earned its way there. It is beautiful. It is on the Adriatic Sea, so kind of across from Italy, and used to be part of Yugoslavia. So it has a really unique, interesting history. And of course, the coastline is beautiful. And this picture is the iconic picture of Dubrovnik, which needs to be on your itinerary in some form or fashion. It's worth it. We do love sending people to Croatia in that shoulder season, like I mentioned. So April, May, September, October, you still get the warm weather, the warm waters of the Adriatic, but maybe slightly less tourism, which does help because it's a lot of these, like Dubrovnik in this walled city, walking the streets of the walled city is kind of what you want to do and stuff. So minimizing even a little bit of the crowd is nice. Because it is on the Adriatic, it is known for some of its beaches and the turquoise waters. I've had clients, and I can't emphasize enough trying to get out on the water. So like we'll do a day rental of a catamaran, a chartered catamaran with a captain, and let you snorkel and get out to some of the islands. There's actually, people don't realize that there are 1,200 plus islands off of the coast. Now, of course, not all are inhabited. Many of them, Hvar and Brock, are kind of the known ones, which is worth a stop and maybe a night stay or at least a day trip to one of them. So getting out on the water and seeing the coastline is amazing. That middle photo in the bottom is kind of interesting. I had some clients do a hike in the hinterland, literally called the hinterland, inland in the valleys and the mountains and the rivers, and then did a barbecue lunch Really fun. So some good hiking and biking there if that's your thing. It is known for lavender. So often you'll see just rolling fields and hills of lavender. It's beautiful. A couple other things that we've had clients do that I love that is worth calling out is they do have several good vineyards, and people don't always classify Croatia as a good wine country, but it really is. So I had some clients do a biking wine thing where they biked out to the vineyard, and then did some tastings and then were shuttled back. Or we can tailor to whatever you want. Obviously, as you know, that our sweet spot is designing the trip specific to you, so that we would do that in this case, of course, as well. And then another one I want to call out is we had them at Hvar, on the island of Hvar, and they ended their journey in Dubrovnik. So of course you have to go by water back from Hvar to Dubrovnik, and along the coast there's an oyster farm that we work with sometimes. So we had the clients go to the oyster farm, learn about the oyster situation and the farming and how they harvest it, and then they ended up having an oyster lunch before they started their road trip down to Dubrovnik. So just some fun things that give you access to, and I'm not even touching what Croatia is all about. They have 8 amazing national parks. They have some waterfalls. In fact, one of the national parks in particular is known for its waterfalls. So going inland is worth a couple days, or at least a day trip from Split or something, because there's so much to do there that, again, I think should be on your Wanderlist if it's not already. And then of course, finally, I am going to mention Italy. They were one of the first countries to get into this little mess we're in with the virus, but they're also one of the first now coming out of it, of course. And one of the reasons I want to call attention to Italy is because of 2 things. One is, if you're a first timer to Italy, of course, it meets and exceeds all your expectations of why it's on your list in the first place. And as I mentioned before, it doesn't matter if it's your 5th, 6th, 7th, 10th time to Italy. We have this yearning to go back. This is one of those countries I feel like most people would not dispute the yearning to want to go back. It's beautiful. The people are beautiful. There's so much to do. But the reason I put it on this list of why I think it should be on your wander list, whether it's first time or 10th time, is it's a unique time in Italy right now. That top photo represents Venice. And if you've been to Venice, and especially if you've been to Venice maybe in the last 5 years, the canals have gotten quite dirty. And a lot of the locals are now renting out their places on VRBO or Airbnb. So a lot of the locals don't live in Venice proper. And it's just changed the flavor of the place. And we were getting a little bummed about it. But ironically, I don't know if it's meant from some higher power to hit reset and sustainability wise and environmentally wise, or us as telling us to slow down a little in our lives, whatever you're believing about this crazy time we're in. But for Venice, man, they have not seen cleaner channels in decades. It has just given their environment time to rejuvenate and to make itself right again. And I put the dolphin photo in there because that's real. The dolphins have come in from the Adriatic Sea into the channels, into the canals, and people have been seeing dolphins in there. It doesn't happen. The canals are usually dirty. So I love that in some part of me, as much as I wish this wasn't happening, again, maybe it's a little reset, at least for the environment. And of course, it doesn't matter if you're going as a family or as couples or as a getaway. Being in the outdoors of Tuscany and in that open space is great. Of course, we often have people rent villas through us that you can stay for a week, do day trips to wine tastings. Of course, these little mom and pop businesses need us, so it's great anyway. And then the Vatican, that is Vatican City there. Again, having this on your radar in the next maybe year or 6 months is not a bad idea, because again, with the over tourism, lines and crowds at the Vatican are intense. I mean, it's big. There's a lot of people that go there. So having us help you do skip the line passes, for example, that we're big fans of, or the before or after hours access that we can get. Again, it helps just for health and safety because it keeps you away from the crowds. But right now, the crowds are marginal. So it's a good time to consider heading back there or going for the first time. And then the other photo on the bottom actually is Positano. So the Amalfi Coast, of course, is gorgeous. Sorrento and Capri in that area. But there's several areas in that region that people don't always know about. And so Positano is one of our favorites, set up into the hillside. Puglia, which is on the other side of the boot. Lake Como. There's some things that even if you're on your 10th time around, some fun areas that are not always highly touristed, but have so much to offer. So, keep it in mind. The other thing is pairing some parts of Italy with, like, for example, Venice is in the north part of Italy. It is on the Adriatic Sea, and pairing Venice with, like we've done Slovenia, Ljubljana is only an hour and a half to 2 hour car ride from there through the beautiful landscapes of Slovenia, and then maybe into Croatia. They're all very close to each other. So it is one of the fun things that we like to do when we're creating itineraries is if you have this on your list and we know the things you like, we can add to it and make sure we're maximizing your travel. And then my Wanderlist, my final one, and I knew I'd run out of time, so I didn't put a lot in here, but I do want to give a nod to Portugal, because if this, again, isn't on your list, it should be. And they are also doing well against the virus. So keep this one in mind, because this photo represents the Douro Valley. Some of you, if you're a river cruiser, you may know of the Douro Valley, AMA Waterways and other cruise lines, small ship river cruises do this area. But of course, Lisbon, the south of Portugal, has beautiful beaches. The Azores are some islands off of the coast of Portugal. This should be on your list if it's not, and maybe I'll add it into a future travel night to get into a little more detail on what's possible. But again, I just wanted to add it in just because I knew I'd run out of time, but it's doing well against the virus. Okay, so let's get into some kind of the questions and some of the facts about what's going on in travel right now. And of course, the first one to start with is really, what will travel look like? And of course, if you're not asking this question, you should be. And people are looking to travel. There's no doubt, and of course, every survey you look at there is pent-up demand. It's just, frankly, when will we be able to go? And when I say when, I'm really talking about a few factors. I mentioned, when are you comfortable? When does it make sense for you, depending on your health, your risk, your just overall comfort level? That's the first and key one, is when are you comfortable on traveling again? And then, of course, which destinations are lifting their travel bans, and not just travel bans in general, but travel bans to the United States citizens, right? Unfortunately, this week we heard a little bit about Europe maybe extending their restriction to US a little bit, just because of some of the recent cases we've been having. So, let's make sure we're all doing our part to minimize that so that we are able to go again sooner than later. But again, we weigh it, like if they're letting US citizens in, but they're mandating a 14-day quarantine when you get there, that's kind of a oxymoron to me. So those are the things we're watching. Some are letting us in and they want testing when you get on the ground, or more and more destinations now are asking you to show proof of health, which means you have to show a negative COVID test that was taken within maybe 72 hours or 42 hours of you boarding your plane, for example. So we're watching all of those factors, but they all go into this, when can I travel again? And then, of course, we watch, can you get there? We've talked about airlift. Iceland has Iceland Air, but Delta or American are about to add theirs in. So not only do you want to go, will they let us come, but can you get there? Of course, that's why the road tripping gives us a lot more flexibility, but the flights soon will be expanding more and more. And then I do want to tell you that I recently, my team had a call with Delta Vacations, who we do quite a bit of work with, and they are showing some really good insights into timing and what they're seeing with booking right now. Unfortunately, it's good news, but it's kind of sad news, is that the last couple weeks has been the first couple weeks where bookings, new bookings, have exceeded the number of cancellations in a few months. I guess that's no shock, but the nice thing is it's showing optimism, and it's showing that people are booking again. So when are they booking? That was one of the insights that I wanted to share. December, January, April, and then July and August of next year are when these new bookings are occurring, which again, ironically follows the pattern of what you guys, what our survey had told us, and what the national survey is. A lot of people have their sights on December, January, and then, Q1 and Q2 of 2021. And where are they going? With Delta Vacations, particularly Cancun, Montego Bay in Jamaica, Punta Cana in Dominican Republic, Maui in Hawaii, and then Aruba are some of the biggest places that are being booked. Now, Hawaii, super near and dear to me and Jim, because we used to live there. So we have some of our dearest friends for life there. You maybe have seen that they extended their ability to go in for visitors until the end of July, but as of August 1st, they will be administering testing. So if you test negative, then of course they will allow you. So good news there as well. I keep telling people, as long as we're showing progress, then we're in good shape. So anyway, that's when. Now, what to expect? I'm going to highlight two sectors of the travel industry because there's many, but out of time's sake: airlines and hotels. What are they doing? What should you expect out of the experience? Which is a big thing, because things are different, as you can imagine. You're seeing it in your day-to-day life. But let me highlight a couple things on the airlines that you may or may not know. Of course, many of these people, hotels and airlines, in particular as well, are going to ask you to wear masks. Some are taking the enforcement more seriously than others. So just know that you really, really may be asked or reminded repeatedly to keep it on. And then of course their employees will be wearing masks as too. Short term, at least through August and September, some of the airlines are going to be leaving the middle seat empty. Now, if you're traveling as a family, of course, you can ask them to seat one of the kids in the middle seat if you want. But just again, anything to help with the social distancing. Delta is really staying true to this. I do know that American and United on some of their flights kind of went back on that a little bit. So watch it and ask if that's an important thing to you. There's going to be more time allowed between flights because of the deep cleaning of the planes and making sure that it's safe. And sometimes they might be doing some testing at the gates, depending on the destination or the airline. We're seeing more of that. So there might be more time in between. So maybe it means your layovers are even a little longer, but no, it's all for health and safety reasons. And I had to laugh that I was on the phone with one of the vice presidents in New York from Delta last week, and he said that part of the reason too is that so that they can apply an electrostatic disinfectant, which is a fancy way to say fogging. They're they're fogging the planes more and more to kill any virus, which actually they kill 99% of the viruses in the air. So I thought that was very promising. But the cool thing is that you're going to hear more and more about your phone. The technology is going to be more important than ever in our travels, and you will get a notification on your app that says that your plane has been disinfected. So they're just to let you know that they're taking it seriously and that they want the safety there so that your confidence is back. And then a lot of the flights are doing a couple little things different. You might get your snack prepackaged, and as you board, they are going to probably have the flight attendants roaming a little less than they did before. Your amenities might be a little bottle of hand sanitizer. You know, things like that, just again to foster the safety and health. And then a lot of the airlines are limiting capacity right now. For example, Delta is only booking 60% capacity in main cabin and 50% in premium. Again, just to keep the numbers lower, but yet being able to operate the flights. And they are working as an industry, you know, in general, at least the big four airlines are working together to try to get more testing at the gates and stuff like that so we can feel confident in going. So that's kind of the airlines. Hotels, what to expect. Again, technology is going to be king. Ironically, they're just basically in travel right now, trying to minimize the touch points so that it minimizes exposure, right? So our phones might be how we check in. You might skip the front desk. They might ask you to check in right before you enter the hotel. Employees, again, will be wearing masks, and they're going to be asking you to wear masks. We're seeing this at Pique Travel with our event space, that of course there's new stipulations on how often hotels and event venues are expected to clean highly trafficked areas. So at least once an hour, if not more, we are to disinfect all the doorknobs in the highly touched areas. So the hotels are definitely doing that. Beach chairs and restaurant tables and stuff will be socially distanced a little bit more. If they do have a phone buffet, you're going to see plexiglass maybe, and you're going to have staff serve it to you so that people aren't coming through a line on top of each other and each person handling the serving utensil. So that's going to be something. Room service is going to grow in popularity, but they're going to probably knock on the door and leave the table outside. Housekeeping is going to be optional at a lot of these places. If you want your bed made and fresh towels every day and don't mind someone coming into the room while you're not there, then great. If you aren't, then you will opt out of housekeeping, and then no one will come into your room while you're there. And then a lot of these hotels are letting rooms rest in between stays. So maybe it's 24, 48, 72 hours where another guest will not be in that same room to let it settle. But then of course the deep cleaning that's going on more so than ever. A lot of these hotels of course have been practicing some of these already, but it's heightened, and it's making sure they're using the right products. They're replacing air filtration systems in the rooms with really high-end commercial grade that is taking out 99% of the germs. So a lot of good things, and some of them I hope stay, right? I think some of this is good practice for us to get into anyway. And then some, I would love to see my bellman smile and not through the mask. It's hard to express emotion when you're and empathy and gratitude when you're wearing a mask. But if it means we're safe and healthy, then that's what we do. Other things they're doing, like no more than 4 people in an elevator and washing things down. And so you'll see a lot of that kind of stuff. I kind of mentioned this a little bit, but this is something that's really hit me a lot is Pique. Hopefully you've known us to really deliver personal experiences. It might be with very local guides. It might be going into someone's home in Italy for a cooking class. So it's a really interesting juxtaposition for me on how do we continue to deliver a high touch experience and personal experience in a world right now that is becoming no touch. And we're taking that very seriously, because if it's a destination that you want to go to, but you can't experience it like it should be experienced, maybe we table it for another year, where there's plenty of other destinations that are probably on your list that we can still deliver it. So again, keep that conversation open with your designer, because we really want to make sure that travel delivers everything you need it to. This photo is one of my favorites. I was in India a year ago, and this matriarch just kind of took to me and talk about the high touch world. It's one of my favorites. All right, so looking into the future, I know that we're all interested, we're all itching to get back, but even though bookings are showing up now for this fall and winter, and then of course, as you've seen here tonight or maybe been hearing, is Q1 and 2 of next year is really when people are starting to venture out. Please do not wait to book that long. And of course, that's that's partially the business person in me saying, you know, to come back our way sooner than later. But really, let me tell you, 4.7 million Americans traveled to Europe just in the months of April, May, and June in 2019. So now imagine that everybody halted their travels in 2020 and are looking to next year. But we were already working on trips for next year. So we're basically jamming 2 years worth of travel into next year. And we already have actually quite a few bookings for 2022. But 2021 is going to be an interesting year because we're watching availability. And so if you know that, you know, you have your sights set for April and you're hoping to go to Greece or Portugal or Croatia or Italy, or anywhere else for that matter, if we can promise you or deliver that low risk, no risk proposition where your deposit's low and your cancellation is flexible and things like that, don't wait to book it. We will watch out for your best interest so that you have your investment is protected, but you are not alone. And a lot of people from around the world are anxious to get back to these places. So keep it in mind. And the other thing is that a lot of our people that were traveling in 2020 had to take credits to be used next year. So that's why the availability issue is actually quite real. And then, you know, we'll continue to monitor it. If the travel bans fluctuate and stuff like that, obviously, you know, we'll keep our eye on it, but just use it as a case by case basis, because let us know if you know that you want to do Iceland sometime in 2021. Let's at least start the discussion so we can watch the airlift, we can watch the pricing, we can watch the values that are maybe out there, and make sure we're guiding you to the best way possible. All right, and then finally, before we go, I wanted to share a few tips. Given the last slide, of course, planning ahead is going to be key. So, or at least starting the discussion so that we know what's on your radar. So give us a heads up, and it might mean you're not ready to book for a little while yet, but just to know it's on your radar so we can watch things and monitor things will be very helpful for us. And, you know, use your travel designer, because we are working with our partners all over the world to, again, deliver those terms and conditions that will make it favorable for you to book ahead. And if we can do that, then your confidence can be good. And if it's a country where we're not confident, we're going to tell you, let's just sit tight for now. We would not advise you otherwise. Be sure you understand your options on travel insurance. This has kind of been one of those discussions that's been hot and cold. We do have a really good understanding of how the insurance works in a time like this, how it works and how it doesn't work. So have an open conversation with your travel designer. If it gets to the point, because we are not licensed insurance sellers, of course, we have an amazing partner or two that we will pull in on a 3-way call to help answer your questions if you're not liking what we're saying or you're not confident. But trust me, we've gotten a nice tutorial in travel insurance, among other things, in the last few months. And then finally, a tip, look at your passport. If you know international travel is going to be part of your short-term or mid-term plan in the next 6 to 12 months or 18 months even, check your passport. You've probably heard us say that you need at least 6 months of time on your passport before it expires, because a lot of countries require that 6-month mark. Well, passport agencies, just like many companies and businesses, have had to scale back or close their offices during these last few months. So there is a long line of renewal applications that are in the queue. Right now, they are putting people back to work, so they will start to catch up. They're following a first in, first out type of response. So if you know you're going to need yours renewed, get it in sooner than later, because you want the flexibility that if a weekend thing comes up at Nizuc in Cancun and they're giving a 4th night free with a 3-night stay, give yourself the flexibility to go if you can. If your passport's expired or not able to do it, obviously that takes away that flexibility. So keep that in mind. All right, so thank you so much for joining tonight. Reach out to your travel advisor if you want to at least get a discussion on the table, even if you're not ready to book, so that we can be watching and making sure we're guiding you the best way we can. If you're new to us, I put Jess's email up here. You can always email me as well. It's lindab@piquetravel.com, and we'll hook you up with somebody, or I'll help take care of you as well. With knowing, how far to balance planning ahead and what's a good idea. You might have questions about insurance or passports and things, let us know. But I thank you for staying with me during this time. I hope it has provided some good education, some updates on the global situation. And then I, of course, hope it gives you optimism and hope and some great ideas on when and where you can get out to next. We can't wait to travel again, and some of us already are, and we hope you feel the same. So we thank you and look forward to hearing from you soon. Thanks.